What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Divij podcast, episode 132. We're not going to stop till we hit 1,000. I say that every time because I'm serious. Man, we got a really special guest today. We are still in Nashville. We shot an incredible episode yesterday with Gio. Shout out to Capitol Records and everybody over there for putting that together. We really appreciate it. But I was thinking to myself a couple weeks ago as I was talking to Grant, who's our new podcast producer, and I was like, yo, like, we haven't had a comedian on. And, like, you know, as someone that manages comedians, aka George Janko, I've always been hesitant because I've, you know, as a part of his show, I've seen so many people like Bobby Lee, Chris D'Elia, Jeff Dye, all these incredible comics come to his house, and I've had a chance to meet them. And I'm like, y'all are like low key super intimidating. Like because there's a level of sarcasm, intelligence, and humor that comes with these kinds of people. And I'm a business guy, so like my brain's like thinking about numbers and about like money and stuff like that. So I'm always like, I don't know how to interact with comedians, and I've realized I just gotta be myself. Like I can't try to be funny or try to out funny them because it never works. So I was like, you know what? Let me get a comedian on. Let's have a conversation. Let's see how it goes. And yeah, we came to Nashville. I got my boy Luke White sitting next to me. Incredible comedian. Does a lot of really cool work. Is the host of the Beer and the Headlights show. So yeah, Luke, welcome to the pod, bro.
Thanks, bro. This is so fun having this handheld guy.
Yeah, kind of feels like you're holding a dick, huh? A little bit.
It feels like I'm doing a stand-up set right now.
Do you do stand-up? Is
no,
that something?
No, I'm like that's the funny thing. Like it's so funny. I was thinking about this yesterday because I was like overthinking my Instagram bio because, you know, like I think I've gone back and forth from like video creator or digital creator to comedian like 20 times.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I have so much respect for like comedian. Like when I think comedians, I think like stand up, like, and it's hard because it's like obviously things have changed so much.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have people consider comedians that just like, you know, sit and react to clips and stuff like that don't really, you know, because it's a different space now. But like comedian just feels like such a different title where I'm like, you have to like earn it in a different way where I'm like, I don't know how else to describe it. I'm like, everything I do is in comedy satire. So I'm like, I guess that's like comedian, like by definition.
Yeah.
But yeah, haven't done any stand up officially or anything. I don't know if I will. Like, I'd like to maybe try, but yeah.
Is it can I ask, is it like a fear thing? Is it like, because I know a lot of people that are comedians, they're on TikTok and they do so well behind the camera, but then they get on stage and they just like choke up.
Honestly, no. I've literally done, I did like, I did a ton of public speaking from the time I was like 18 to 22, 23. And I actually taught communication for like a couple years.
Oh, yeah.
And so communicating, like talking in front of people isn't necessarily scary on like a wide range of topics. Comedy is so unique because it feels weird to like, I guess, put yourself in a position where you're like, I'm up here because I think I'm funny. Like that's just weird, you know?
Yeah.
Because I like comedy and I like joking and like writing stuff that's funny. But in the setting of like being on a stage and being like, I'm gonna be funny now, you know? Like I don't know what I like. That's why the context of the show is fun because I like the natural banter and stuff that comes about there. Where I'm like, if I was to just go up, I don't know necessarily what I would talk about.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't know, you know, in my mind, I'm like getting up there and being like, man, airports, let's talk about it, you know? It's just like, I know, stuff. Yeah, I could probably do it, but it just feels intimidating to like be in that space. I would like to do it to challenge myself, but I'm like, because the live, it's easy to do anything that you can edit out or behind the camera or whatever. But a live audience of like, I gotta be funny right now.
Yeah.
It is intimidating in that sense, but yeah.
We just went to a comedy show in LA at my buddy Enrique's spot, and it was like Craig Robinson, legend guy. I forget his.
I know the name.
Yeah, big comedian. It was like this lady Ray something, like all these crazy comedians, and half of them like low-key, in my opinion, kind of bombed. And I felt bad. It was kind of scary because they came on so confident, and then, you know, there was one of the audience members was like talking a lot, and the comedian got like super upset, and the energy in the room just kind of like went down.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, this is like a lot more difficult than it seems, because you have to get up there and, like, especially if you're improvising, you're just going off the crowd. Like, you're not even really coming with material. So I could see how it's intimidating, like, versus you have your show and you can kind of just like edit, refilm it. You have more control.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I like comedy is cool though. Like, I think that's what's been cool with like writing, you know, scripts for the show. Like writing, it is, I think the best way to describe it, like I was talking to a friend who does stand up in LA.
Yeah.
Like last week, I was like, when I started out, I was like, okay, I'm like writing interviews, and then within a few episodes that we filmed, I'm like, no, like I'm writing comedy, like, and it's strategic. Like it's just weird. Cause like, I remember before I wrote the script for the first episode, I was like, I need to like write interview questions and like kind of get that down. And then I started writing, and I remember thinking like, oh shoot, like you have to like know how to like integrate punchlines and so I like that as a bit, like a very similarly, like, it's funny, like as a business, like strategic kind of thinker, that's like outcome thinking. Yeah. I love the strategic like setups of things, of like, and it's cool hearing comedians talk about it. Like I was listening to a ton of stuff in the last few weeks, writing scripts. I'm like listening to as much stuff as possible of like, and it's cool to hear. I've never listened to anything official of like a comedian breaking stuff down, but it's cool to hear somebody breaking it down in a way that I broke it down in my mind, that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was like an actual method or something, you know, like referring to like a tagline essentially, like you have your setup, you have your joke, and then you have your tagline, and then it's like you're gauging also on like the response to that, on whether or not to like keep hitting that throughout conversation.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, if you think of it in a sense of like being in conversation with friends, you know, it's like, that's where I feel like I'm naturally the funniest, is with friends that are also funny, and us just bantering. And it's like, you notice yourself do that. It's like you make and it almost like at the same time relates and brings people into it, which makes it funnier. Is like, you know, you have a moment where something was funny, and then it's like, naturally everybody in that conversation is like, if you feel like you get to know people a lot quicker, or like more comfortable when everyone kind of brings that back around and hits that point again. You know, it's like an inside joke in a sense of like, we had this joke and this thing was funny, so throughout the whole day we're together, the whole night we're together, like everyone's kind of like bringing that thing back up,
right? And
it's like funny again, and it's cool. It's a cool space for sure, but I like it a lot.
Yeah. Comedy's definitely like the best way to like relate to people quickly, for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely my gauge is so funny. Like, I have one of my best friends, Nick, he just moved to LA a couple months ago. Yeah. And me and him, like, it's funny, like in group settings, like especially new group settings, like I drove with him from Nashville to LA a couple months ago, because he moved out there and packed his truck of stuff, and we stopped in Dallas and stayed with some friends, some people we had never met, but I like mutuals. And it was funny, like watching each other, like it's like we have like a bank of jokes between us that we integrate in our content, or like we'll integrate in different conversations, or like bits, that are funny. And so it's so funny because we were both like subconsciously at the end of the night, we were laughing about it, almost like running through our whole deck of bits.
Oh, I'm dead.
Like back and forth, testing which ones work, and to gauge kind of like where they're at. Like, because I feel like that's how I relate to people a lot, is like comedy kind of stuff, or like where their sense of humor is. So you kind of have levels, it's like you have surface level humor. Yeah. And then you kind of like go a little deeper and see like, does this hit? And then you go a little bit more risky and you're like, does this hit? Like, do you think this is funny? And then you're kind of like, once you reach that point, you're like, oh, we're like, we could be friends, you know, like, like obviously you have friends otherwise, but it's like, those are usually people that you're like really close to, that you're like, can kind of go back and forth, on like bits and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, facts. It's interesting. I've noticed because I've hung around so many different comedians. Like some people will walk through the door, like Russell Brand, for when I met him, immediately just hilarious, like dropping jokes. Same thing with like a Chris D'Elia or Jeff Dye. They're just like, it doesn't matter what the energy in the room is, they're gonna be funny. But I've met other comedians where they come in the room and they kind of first they'll gauge like, is it serious? What are they thinking? What are they thinking? And then they'll almost like match the energy in the room, which I find so interesting because I'm like, usually comedians are the ones that should be bringing the joy, but those ones that are more sensitive, I've noticed, are almost like more funny than the other ones. So I'm curious with you, like, and also I want to get into your childhood and like how you kind of got to where you are, which we can talk about. But your approach to comedy, is it like, are you the former or the latter? Are you more like you come with that comedy, or you're just like, let me feel the room first and then?
Yeah, it depends on the setting. I would say like if it's a new setting, new people, I'd like to feel the room out. I think because I'm like, I've loved, you know, like humor has been a part of my life my whole life. Yeah. But I also like, you know, I'm so extreme on both ends. Like I'm super serious and like, or I'm super like, you know, not serious about something. So it's like very extreme. So I'll gauge the room. If it's friends, like, and people that I know, or like comfortable with, like, I'm usually like roll up and that's just kind of like, you know, joking kind of right away. Like usually it's like the buffer, you start that way and like you're laughing and joking, and then it's like you kind of like, so like what's new, you know? It's like kind of how you gauge stuff. But I definitely, it's funny, I was in a group like recently. It was like a group of dudes like doing workouts in the mornings like twice a week here in Nashville, with like a YouTuber, like influencer guy, and some other dudes. And because it was a new setting and it was also early in the morning, like I was just kind of like, I wasn't thinking about it, like I was just kind of like, I guess super quiet, you know. So what was funny is like 3 weeks in, one of the guys like had realized like I was, you know, he's like, oh dude, I've definitely seen your videos, whatever. And then they had like, were watching them, and a few of them were like, oh yeah, I've seen them too, whatever. And they're like, man, this is so funny. Like you're such a, you know, this character online, but like you're a pretty quiet guy. You know, I'm like, internally I was like, I don't feel like I'm that quiet, but like maybe I wasn't thinking about it. In new settings, I guess I'm like I like to people watch and like analyze things. So I like definitely can sometimes just be internal and just like watching people. But cause I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I think it's like being aware enough. Like I think my worst fear, like I know people and been around people that are funny or to a degree funny, but have zero self-awareness. And that is the most terrifying thing to me, is like in settings and moments or where you're like, it's just not the move, you know, or making jokes that you're like, bro, you just don't know them like that, you know? So I'm just like, I like to go in more serious to try to, cause I think it's very different. Like even that's how we've structured the show, and how I've done a lot of my content is like, you know, we did a write-up, I remember a couple weeks ago, just kind of like almost like a brand guideline for the show of like, what are we about? Like, what are, you know, for our editors, for our guests, like for everyone involved, like here's kind of like the brand guidelines in a way. And, you know, a big part of that is like, naturally, I'm like, I don't want to ever like do something or make a joke or something at someone else's expense that's like actually like, you know, harmful in some way, or like make someone feel uncomfortable, or like I'm making fun of them. Like I think there's a very difference between like a like mutual or like common ground, like poking fun or like like deprecating joke, and there's versus me making fun of someone.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, and so that's like, I think, yeah, I've like steered around certain things like that because this is not who I am. So I would say that's a big part of that dynamic too, of like in a new setting, being like, okay, what's the vibe? Like, and my first priority is like, you know, it's like, I want this person to know that like you know, it's almost like setting a safety net of like, dude, I'm not like going to make fun of you, or like, I'm not a mean person. I'm not going to like, I actually want to know like you, or like things about you first. And then I'm like, if we joke or whatever, great. But it's almost like, even though that's not me, it's like, I think that can be interpreted two ways of like being that funny, like non-self-aware person can either be translated as like they're just super unaware of stuff and it seems immature in a lot of settings, or on the other end, they're like insecure and like, and those are the type of people that are the ones that are mean and making jokes at other people's expense and throwing people under the bus. Is like, not because it is, yes, it's funny, but it's almost like the motive behind it isn't because it's funny. It's like, because they're like compensating in a way for something. And, you know, and so I'm like, I don't want to be, I think my worst fear would be that someone would interpret something I say that way and be like, oh man, he sucks, or like he's mean or whatever. But so I think a bit of both.
You're not coming with like malicious intent. Like your comedy is like, you actually want to make people laugh, but you're a kind person, so you're not there to like,
absolutely
make them feel bad about it.
Yeah, and I'm like, we're like I'm the first person to say too, like, you know, I'm like, if we're doing an episode or something, I'm like, I'm like, our script, like we'll show their team, management, PR or whatever, and you know, we've never had any major like edits, like. One, because it's like it's not really that crazy, you know, like out there stuff. It's just like there'll be a few minor things, and there'll be things that I'll know. Like, it's funny, we did an episode, and I had one part in the intro that I didn't feel right about. I just didn't have anything else at the time, but I did have an alternative. Like, I think I had an alternative option, but I was driving in, and I was like, dude, you know what? I'm not gonna do this thing. I was like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's the move. Like, kind of self-aware of like, I don't really know them that well, like whatever. I get there and we're like setting up. Their team gets there and like the other producer comes over with the script and like shows me, he's like, hey, like his manager just like he asked if we could like veto this. And I was like, dude, already done. You know, I'm like, I'm like, I'm on the same page. And it wasn't even, it was not something crazy. It was more so like, me thinking how it could be interpreted by him. And I was like, I don't know if he's going to feel like, see this as funny or see this as offensive.
Right.
When I'm not trying to be offensive. And so like, I was like, okay, we're on the same page. So I'm like, that's,
Yeah, that's interesting. But I also feel on the flip side, like a lot of the best comics, like Dave Chappelle, in my opinion, they're kind of like unapologetic about the topics that they talk about. Like Dave Chappelle will say the FAG word, like he'll say things like that are very controversial. We'll talk about LGBTQs, the trans. And like, people of course are getting offended. Like sometimes I'm offended. I'm not trans. But like at some point I feel like for the comedy to be like, some of the best comedy in my opinion is offensive and is like that. And it's like, if you're sensitive, you shouldn't be in the room. Like don't be listening. So do you ever feel that, like a degree of like, if you're listening to me, it's because it's comedy. Like this isn't personal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's so interesting too with the term like offended is so like such a broad like thing now, you know, it's kind of like such a general term. Like I feel like, you know, 10 years ago, if you were to use the term of like, I don't want to offend someone, it's such a pure, genuine motive. But like now it's like a fear lenient thing of like, I don't want to offend someone. Most of the time it's like I'm afraid of the, I don't know, backlash of that or whatever. But I think the safe zone is always like in the mutual comedy stuff of like, you know, making jokes that it's like I'm not excluded from in a way. Like it's different of like targeting if it's like something that I've done or like you know, relatable, that it's like it could be offensive to someone who like also does that thing but isn't self-aware enough to see it as like kind of funny or like what it is. You know, it's like if you were to, you know, if I was to make fun of like, I don't know, us caring how much we look, you know, or like, and give a realistic scenario, it's funny. It can be funny and mutually funny because I've done that myself. Yeah. And if I'm describing thoughts I've had or things I've done to like, because of how much, you know, I cared about that, and I'm kind of poking fun at that, it'll be a mixture of funny to people that are also like either already self-aware of that or being made self-aware of that during the joke, where they're like, oh, that's funny, I didn't even realize I do that. Yeah. But then there's the people that are offended because it's like they're not able to like kind of like take a joke about it because maybe they're like, you know, it's too real for them. You know, it's like meeting social media like influencers in Nashville that I've met, like that do shirtless cowboy country like content. Like
that's a thing.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. It's, I mean,
I started thinking about Lil Nas X when you said that. It's
a niche, bro. It's a niche, and they've migrated here to Nashville. But here's the funny thing. I'm friends with multiple people that do that will be the first person to say, bro, like, I know, dude, like, I'm not, like, I get it. Like, it is, you know, like, they're self-aware. And so it's like, if I was to make a joke about it, they're like, that's funny. On the other hand, there's other people that it's like, they're like, yeah, it's like you can't poke fun at that because like that's their like thing, and it's like, and so I think there's an element that's healthy for everyone to remain in a place of almost like, you know, I don't know, like everything's free game in a way to like talk about that's kind of mutually relatable. There's obviously topics and stuff that's like, when it's really personal or whatever, and because you can't control someone's interpretation. Like, I could talk about, you know, how I hate, I don't know, wearing shoes, and it could offend somebody because there could be some, I think it's impossible for me to try to work out every scenario of someone receiving something the wrong way. But I'm like, I think there's obviously, I'm like, I never want to attack somebody, or whether it's an individual person or like a group of people, even if I was to make a really pointed joke at, you know, I don't know, like it's funny. It's like, there's just, nowadays it's almost like anything could be offensive to some degree. And so it's like, we can only really do our best to, you know, have pure intentions in what we're doing. And it's going to be misinterpreted, but it's different. Like, if you're out to be offensive in a way that's like you are, you know, it's different, you know, not being funny. You're just like saying crazy stuff, and you're like, bro, like, don't be offended, dude. You're soft, you know. It's like, it's a little different, you know, when you're kind of like, you know, poking that a little bit. But totally. I don't know. I'm like, I think starting, no matter what you do, like creatively especially, or business or whatever, I think starting from the place of not wanting to offend people is never the right place. Like, I think starting like, if you're to build something or do something and you're like off of not wanting to offend people, I don't think it'll lead you the right place. I think doing it or building it and then kind of having the end result, and then kind of almost reverse engineering of like, is this pointed at someone, or would this offend someone in a way that's not just, you know, generalized, but like, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense, bro. It's kind of like if Post Malone was like cooking up White Iverson. He's like, dude, like, I don't know, this beat might be like too whatever, like, I'm not going to put it out. It's like, he's making something that he thought sounded good, and people thought it sounded good, and it was cool. And I feel like if some people are like, yo, like, I mean, I don't see how you could be offended by White Iverson, but like, maybe they were like, why does it have the word white? Like, was it white people?
No, like, probably people are, dude.
Yeah. But it's like, he's not going to not put the song out or not call it White Iverson because of white people. Like, it's just like,
What, it's like, because that's a weird thing too. Like I've done that with videos, or I've created a video, and almost like making where I'm like, like I know this is like, to someone who, if I was to show you and be like, you'd be like, oh, that's great. I could tell you then how I think people could possibly interpret it.
Yeah.
And then you would be like, oh my gosh, wait, I didn't think of that. But you're almost like hoping that you're only saying that because you've seen another video where one comment turned the whole video different, you know, or it's like someone makes a video and you're not thinking anything of it. Then you see someone comment and be like, wait, isn't this that or this?
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, oh yeah, screw you. You know, it's like, you suck.
Yeah.
And so you're in that zone where you're like anticipating, like if one person, you know, thinks this thing that could possibly be,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's a weird thing to like walk on eggshells all the time. You know, you can't control everybody, you know, in that way, especially social media. So I'm like, that's why I feel safe in the satire space. Because I'm like, dude, I genuinely feel so, I'm like, I don't give a crap like what anyone comments on any video.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's really nothing you can, like, I'm like, the only people that are hating in comments are people that the joke just goes way over their head.
Right.
So it'll be like a funny song video that I make and someone comments and is like, you suck, or like, you need a, like, and they're completely serious, you know, and you're kind of like, man, the joke's almost on them, because then people are in there replying to their comment and being like, dang, dude, like you missed the whole point. You know, it's like, it's safe in the satire space in a way, because it's like you're kind of, there's like a distance between you, like your real self, and this like kind of satirical character or bit. But I think it's almost the most intimidating thing to be, is like, in my opinion, is like a, you know, you're an influencer or someone on the internet that it's like, that's your whole like actual life is there, because then people can poke at that, you know. It's like
facts.
Like comedy and satire is almost, in my opinion, the most safe, because you know, you're kind of poking at just like a bit or a character. It's like, if I was a serious music artist putting out my music, you know, you're putting out this piece. That's what you see all the time. My algorithm is, me and my wife like laugh. We have like the same algorithm.
Really?
And
what is it? What's in your algorithm?
It'll be, so I'll come across a video. It'll be someone singing a song and it'll be really bad. And I'll know it's not satire because it'll be someone who like maybe has like 500 followers and is posting real content. Yeah. It will have like a couple comments and then it'll have like 10,000 shares. You know, it's dang. Like, so it'll be like some people who are like seeing it and then they're like sending it to someone else. Yeah. But it's, you know, it's like someone trying to be serious, but not taken that way. And so that's kind of more scary to me. It's like, if you're like, this is me and I'm putting this like, and then someone's like, you know, man, you suck, or like this is, and then it becomes like a thing like that has happened all the time.
We were just talking about this yesterday. At my agency, we signed this girl, Neve Pratt, who does these like dad jokes.
Dude,
you seen this chick?
I love her content,
bro. But the comments are just like,
the craziest, dude. Like,
it's like, yo, take a rattlesnake and eat it, and then rub my body with Cheez-Its.
What's wild to me is like, I think it's so interesting. Like, it's kind of just, I don't know, like, again, analytical, like looking at something like that is watching how people like catch on to something is like, for me, like, it's interesting to see like one little thing can become your brand. So like, like literally one thing becomes it, and then you see that and that's all you are. So I remember I had been doing like funny song videos for a while, and I made this one, which is so funny, like, because I almost didn't make. I had a different caption for this video. I was going to do a different concept, and last minute I was like, I don't know, like, this is dumb. Which this was more dumb, but in a good way. I was like, I'll just make this one, and it was essentially like, what was the caption? It was like, if you love beer, trucks, and dirt, listen to this country song. and it was like this dramatic kind of track, and then I like point up, and it was just like beer, 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 truck, 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 dirt, 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 and like it went so crazy.
Yeah.
And within, you know, that day or whatever, it's like so funny. It was my brand. It was like every like video from then on was all the comments are like, if I posted something about a truck, where's the dirt? Where's the beer? Like beer truck dirt, like blah, blah, blah. And so then I like made merch and stuff, and that's become a whole thing. But it's funny, like, like people, especially comment, like that's my favorite part about social media. It's like, not even the content, is the comments. Like I have group chats with my buddies like that. We'll just send a video and just say comments, like, you know, and you'll go, because that kind of, it's cool because it almost like the spectators are becoming the people that are like giving the caption in a way, which makes it funnier. And so it's just, I don't know, it's cool. I like comments a lot on videos, but I'm like, those ones are crazy, and I'm like, I don't. The crazy part about that to think about is that started by one dude saying something. I don't know who it was, but it's like
it just said something funny, and then it became a thing.
Said one thing like that, and probably came back the next video and did the same thing again, and then a couple times, and then people started doing it, and now I've not read one comment under a video like that that's normal. Like, they are crazy. I'm like, you know, like felonies, you know, I'm
low
like,
key, it's
like,
aggressive, bro.
It's crazy, bro. I'm like, what would be the worst is being one of those people and it being like one of the comments that actually like pops off and you're like pinned at the top, and then all these people that you know can see it. Because I'm like, people are crazy, but that is wild. Dang,
they're savages. I didn't even know we represented her until yesterday. It's so funny.
Dude,
it's like, wow,
what a niche.
Yeah, interesting niche. We got religion, and then we got that chick. She's great. We love you. But yo, I wanna kind of hear about your story a little bit. Like, I like to get to know my guests, and I hopefully we become friends too. I love that. But like, who was Luke White like in high school and college? Like, were you always a comedian? Like, how did you get started in this whole world?
Dude, I love. It's such a funny. It's such a funny, like, feels like a full circle thing for me. Like, anyone who would have known me as like a teenager, like, I would say most, like, no one's surprised in a way. Like, it's like people who know me personally, or like my family, or like when I started doing social media stuff and it started popping off in like the comedy space, like anyone who actually knows me wasn't surprised, because they're like, we know you, you know, we're around you all the time. You're like, you're, you know, like this. And so it's just funny because, like, I know it sounds like so corny to be like, yeah, like, you know, these were the reasons I was like in trouble in school and stuff, and look at me now, like, this is what I do for a job, you know, which is so funny. It's real though. It's like, I was like you know, I was probably the most likely to like never leave my small farm town ever, and like ever for the rest of my life. And then I moved when I was like 18, and then I worked with a nonprofit for like kind of 4 years, and that was like my beginning of my adulthood. And then like leaving kind of my town, and then everything of like making friends from scratch as an adult, and like living on my own, and like doing stuff like that. And I met my wife, and like just like being an adult and doing things. And I've always loved like comedy stuff, and you know, that's like my personality. But I wouldn't necessarily ever think that I'd be doing exactly what I'm doing now, but definitely, like, I remember probably when I was like 19 or 20, like I'm 25 now, turned 26 in June, so getting
Let's
up there.
go. Happy birthday, bro. Almost.
Yeah, close. But I remember being 20. I had one friend who, because I didn't know anyone who did social media stuff, but I had one friend that beginning of TikTok, like started doing TikTok stuff and comedy stuff, and popped off. And he moved out to LA and was doing that full time. And it felt like, I remember something in me being like, God, like, can you imagine? Like, I would love to do that. Like, it felt like a pipe dream of like, that sounds so fun. Cause me and him, we would do this stuff without filming, you know, it's like the bits and like, oh man, can you imagine this, or this would be funny, or like, and so it was funny to see him go off and do it and film it. And then, you know, years later, it's like now we're both in the space, but it's, yeah, I mean, I feel like growing up, like when I was younger, I was very like, I don't know, I felt safer to kind of not be anything almost like bold or risky of like, I was very chameleon, like different friend groups, like switching around, I'd be completely different and just like definitely no like individual like identity.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, until I was like an adult, like until I was like 18 or 19, because I feel like it's different. I think one of the most like, especially if you, depending on like, you know, what your background is, you know, but I'm like, I think getting into an adulthood, you're kind of like forced in some ways, you know, depending on how open you are to it, to like, you know, shape or like almost like define you as a person with, you know, and for me, it was like a big part of that. Obviously, when I was 18 was really when my life changed a ton and gave my life to Jesus, and like so much change in my life on a big scale. And I think the most shaping years for me were those first few years of like, you know, because I mean, obviously growing up, being young, teenager, you're like, and we had social media, obviously, but like, it's crazy how even that long ago was so different. Like Instagram was not videos yet.
Right.
We had Vine, but no one around me like made Vines. You're all spectator, you know, it's like you're a spectator. So it's like, I didn't know anyone who made content. Nowadays it's like just so saturated, but even then to a degree, like you're kind of looking for someone to tell you who you're supposed to be and like what you're supposed to be. And I definitely lean into that in every degree, you know, at that age, because I was just desperate for, I wanted to know, you know, it's like, I want to know who I am too. And so it's like, I remember probably senior year of high school switching like 5 times of like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, or I'm going to do it, which is such like a funny thing to look back now and be like, to think that, I don't know, to honestly the structure of that, of like at that age, like people thinking they, you know, I probably 80% of friends that I was like, oh dang, they haven't figured out, because they got into this university or college. Most of them dropped out, you know, and it's like they're kind of right back at square one or doing other things. And so it's like, I remember kind of switching around a little bit, obviously, because I think that's a dynamic you're stuck in and will be stuck in unless you know, find, you know, the truth of who you are at the core, you know, with Jesus. Because I'm like, it's everything out, like to a degree, it's like that could sustain me as like I could be like, you know what, I'm gonna be this, and like that job is my identity, or like even being like, oh, I'm gonna be a funny guy, like being a funny guy is my identity. But it's like things like that are fruits and byproducts of who we are, but in itself isn't sustainable. You know, it's like, okay, something tragic happens, is being a funny guy who's also really good at this going to sustain me in that? You know, it's like, that's going to change, because those things are dependent on so many different things. But then for me, it was like almost like a slate wiped clean of like, at the core, like, who am I as because I think as a guy, like as a man, I think one of the biggest, hardest questions, that's the most important question, I think, especially at that age and like in life, is something that never like ceases, but it's like, who am I as a man, and like who am I right now, and who am I, called to be and become. And it's, I think the beautiful thing about the Bible is that isn't separate, like, which doesn't make sense, to people, like, and I get that, it's like I've had a conversation with people, trying to explain it in a tangible term. It's such a weird dynamic of like, okay, well, if you become a Christian or give your life to Jesus or whatever, it's like you become something in that moment, because you become what God says you are and who you're created to be, while also continuing to become that to a deeper level. And so it's like a weird dynamic, because you're like, when I was like the worst person I knew, like, and not just like, man, I was the worst. And like, I was the worst, like, my motives, like internally, externally, like I sucked. Like I would not want to be my friend.
Yeah.
I'm like, and that's such a funny dynamic, is like, fast forward, it's funny, the people that people don't irritate me or like make me upset, but it's funny, the people that I found God's put in my life, like younger dudes that will really irritate me, like, and I'll be like, oh, it's because they remind me of me before I, like, when I was really kind of lost and really didn't like me and was the worst, I was like, oh, there's elements of that remind me of that. But I think that was kind of like the core of my journey, which I think is something that you continue to always come back to as well. It's like, it's where I'm at now too, is like life. I'm 25, but I have a beautiful wife of 4 years. We got married when I was 21.
Wow.
I have a 1-year-old son.
Let's go.
And
congratulations.
Best thing ever. And it's not even just like, it sounds so, it's so different. It's like you hear people say that, like, man, yeah, you'll never be saying like having kids is the best or whatever. But I'm like, at such a deep level where, it is so true, where I'm like, say this fully convinced, where I'm like, all the social media stuff could stop, like whatever, like work. I'm like, I like literally don't care. Like that's just like what happened. It's just like being a dad and like having a son, and like that, it just gives so much perspective to what matters in so many ways. And so I think to a degree that's just been like piece by piece, obviously, like growing up since I've, was a teenager, but that was really a lot of that kind of solidified that. But it is funny, like having, especially now, like I think I was thinking about this on the drive here today. One of the weirdest full circle things for me is like, I was so like I was probably the most insecure teenager, like on top of being the worst. I was also, I think that's why I know and I can read that off people. It's like, I wasn't just like horrible. I was so insecure. Yeah. And so that's why I was horrible.
Totally.
It's like people were so horrible to me. I was always the guy, like no joke, like I was always the guy where every joke was like directed towards like the center of the joke. Like, and I think I learned how to like try to take that and make it funny and like be that guy of like, but it sucked, because I think because I was so sporadic and lost, I didn't have anything like, obviously from a core identity level, like, I didn't know who I was, but it's like I didn't have anything going for me in a way of like, I wouldn't, settle into something. I wasn't really good at, I didn't feel like I was good at anything, just kind of like awkward in between my buddies over here, like really great at football or like really good at sports, or this girl's really smart, or like blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I wasn't not any of those things, but I was just kind of like too confused to really commit to anything.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the craziest things I was thinking about this morning is, you know, I was 16, probably like the peak of that, like life of just being, you know, it was really rough. But I remember my first truck I ever had was a white single cab truck, and my dad, like, we had gotten it, and then like driver's seat was like torn up, so we had like this camo seat cover thing, and I loved it. And he had gotten me like a stack of country CDs, because I love country music, and I remember I just put them in and listened to them all the time. But it's just so funny, like I was driving in today in a white truck, but I'm, you know, I've met most of them and interviewed some of them that I would drive around my little town, you know, listening to their music. And it's just funny, like being in this space now where it's like, dude, that is like, I'm completely like, I think the main thing, like, and it's not a like false humility of being like, because I think there's a difference between like, it's all God, like, you know, sometimes we can be like, I didn't do like anything, I'm a piece of crap, and like God did it all. And like, it's a degree of like, I genuinely believe it's like the full truth of like, I believe that there's no freaking way that I would have been able to do anything or be where I am or be who I am at all without the intervention of God in my life at 18. But also knowing that God has built me up as a person, as a man, as an individual, in character, in skill set, and relationship, in these ways that it's a dynamic of like, I'm capable to do things because he's built those things in me and strengthened those things. At the same time, I need him to do these things because I'm not capable of doing it by myself. So it's like that tension. But yeah, I think that's like back to the identity piece of like, you know, it's so funny, like who is Luke White is like, at that time, you know, no idea, like whoever like I needed to be, you know, for someone to kind of like me. And so I think that was a funny dynamic being an adult, was like learning how to, like it's been weird. It's still a weird dynamic that I wrestle with a lot. Like internally is like, you know, for such a majority of my life, never being anyone who had anything interesting going on or anything going for like, you know, interesting going on, or like was good at something to a certain degree that it was like, you know, noticeable or whatever. And then, you know, being now in a place where it's like, it's just weird to like be doing stuff and then have built these skills and in those spaces. And I still have that kind of like wrestle internally where I'm like, I think that's such a real, it's almost like that imposter, like, you know, cause I can sometimes just see myself as that kid, you know, who I'm like, dude, that like cause I was a chronic liar for probably, probably until I was about 19, like, and not just like, oh man, like literally, like, I joke about this all the time because I'll think of I'll be in a scenario and I'll be like, oh, I remember a story, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember, and then I'm like, oh wait, that never happened. I'm like, I literally told that story 60 million times or whatever. It never happened. I made it up, but I told it so many times it became a reality in my head. Because at that age, I remember being like, I didn't feel like I had anything going on. I wasn't like good at sports or good at this or good. So I was like, my only thing is like, I can like, you know, I'm just going to have to make up stuff about my life or self, because I don't believe that I'm interesting enough or whatever enough. So yeah, it's just a funny dynamic to be like living a lot of the life that I would have like almost built a lie of, where I'm like, it's all real and happening. And so that's like that imposter battle sometimes. It's like, yeah, is weird, but
Yeah, I had that too, bro. I think us as men, it's something that is, I feel like, very normal before you find God, because it's like you want to feel important, you want to feel noticed, you want to feel like you're valuable, and sometimes when you don't have the foundation of God in your heart, and you don't know who Jesus is, and he can't pour into you through the Holy Spirit, like, you're kind of just making things up. Like, I used to tell girls I'm half Italian, half Indian, because I thought that made me more interesting.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I would tell them so much that I also thought I was Italian.
Yeah.
I was like, I have no Italian blood in
it's
me
so
at
real.
all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but man, same thing for me. Like, the moment I found God, it was like, I've never been more comfortable in my skin. And it's like, there's just so much peace that comes with it. You stop trying to impress people. And I think you just, at least from my experience, when after I found God, I just want to be kind. I just want to have fun, and I want to spread the word of God and help other people and contribute to the kingdom. And I think when you live your life from that lens of like, what am I doing today for the kingdom? It's just all the weight comes off your shoulders, bro. And all you do is you show up, you ready, you put on your armor of God and you show up and you're like, I'm here to work. And whatever happens, it happens. There's no expectation because you already have everything you need. It's like you're not fulfilling your heart through the work that you're doing or the fruits of the work. It's like you wake up, you fill yourself with the Spirit, and you have everything. You're just grateful. And so, like, even me sitting here with you, and I'm sure you feel it too, it's like, this is a privilege that we have. You know what I mean? And the fact that we get to sit here and chat about God, and if one person hears it and it touches their heart, like, I think we've done enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Hopefully it reaches millions, but one day we'll get there.
Yeah. No, it's so real, man. I think, like, yeah, it's such a real, I think it's like, goes back to, I think what we build our life on, and building it, the only thing, that is unchanging, is God. Like, and it's like, not just like, oh man, that sounds so cool, like to throw in my Instagram bio or to get a tattoo that says that, it's like, I think it's interesting, like, to say that with a different depth of understanding, like, because I think the misunderstanding a lot of times, like, and I've encountered this a ton with, like, and because I've done this in the past as well, it's like the whole precipice of Christianity is built upon a death, and it sounds intense, like people are like, oh, I don't, that's why people like to shy away from like talking about it. It sounds intense, but it's like, it's only intense in the context of like without what comes after that. It's like when we, biblically, being a Christian and giving your life to Jesus, means giving your life to Jesus. It's like and it doesn't mean, all my interests and passions and skills and all that stuff, like I'm done with that, because I think that's a misinterpretation sometimes, is that, like, because I've done that, because I'm very extreme, is like, okay, to be all in with God, like everything that I am and like and do, like, it's done, and I'm just gonna do this and be this boring, like, person who, and not excel in anything or whatever, just like, and it's interesting because it's like if we're made in the image of God, like, it doesn't mean that we're, to sacrifice that to God, for something. It's like, that's what is to reflect God, is and it looks different in all of us. But I think one thing that's interesting is like the depth of, for my wife, like, and me have both, it's like my wife definitely more than me, like, it's one of the most impressive people to me in the degree of like the amount of behind the scenes stuff of like life stuff that has happened or that she's had to walk through, like, would blow your mind. And it's like, people have no idea. And so it's like, when I look at that or things that's happened in our lives that's been really hard, that I've been in similar scenarios, with people in life that they, you know, chose to walk away from God, you know, and really tough things happening. And I think when, you know, it's like the misunderstanding is that the gospel, you know, and coming to God is, because I think that I've been so guilty of doing that in the past. When I became a Christian, like when I was 18, like really started, you know, following God, I remember communicating in such a way of my life sucked and I was this and I felt this way and I was anxious and I was depressed and this, and then God, and now, dude, everything's great. And it's like, it's, that statement is true, can be true, but at the same time, like that sets this standard of like, okay, then if it's anything else or anything less or anything outside of that, then it means that I'm doing something wrong, you know? And it's like, then we build this theology that's so unhealthy, that's good things happening equals God is pleased and happy with me.
Yeah.
Bad things happening, I'm doing something wrong or God's not happy with me.
Yeah.
And that's a very human way of looking at it. And it's like understanding the consistency of the character of God, of like the depth of saying, you know, even in my life of like some of the, you know, hardest things and really gnarly couple of years of things that I had walked through and had to deal with and figure out. And in the midst of that being like, I don't understand, I don't get it, but I'm committed to God and committed to not being angry at God for certain things, you know, even though I don't understand it. Because I think I heard someone say this one time of like, you can, you know, it's like you can ask God questions, but like it's different than questioning God. You know, it's like, I think I you know, had that dynamic a couple years ago. It was like, I was like almost afraid of being raw and real with God, which is such a funny dynamic when you think of it, because he knows everything anyways. But it's like it felt so weird to be like, hey, I actually kind of like acknowledging, and I think that comes with like you're learning how to be self-aware and emotionally healthy and all these things, but like being able to acknowledge, and marriage will do that to you as well. It's like a big part of it, you know. It's like the most intimate relationship you can have, where you're like forced to face so many emotions and things, and then realizing like, well, there's only two options, you know. We bury it and we don't talk about it, or we talk through it. And one is easy, feels easy now, but it's going to suck later. And one will probably suck now, but it's going to bear fruit later. And so that's like, Jesus, you know, says that, you know, the bride and marriage is a reflection of our relationship with him. And it's the most accurate picture, because it's, okay, this hard moment, like, am I going to be like, oh, I'm good? Like, even though internally I might feel frustrated or question or whatever, because it's like being a dad, it's like my son, it's like, I would want him to come to me and be like, hey, I kind of feel pissed at you, you know, and be like, oh, like, let's talk about that. Like, why?
Yeah.
Why are you pissed? Like, it's like, I'm not going to be like, yo, like, how dare you? You know, you don't have the right to be pissed at me. It's like, it's not even about that. You know, it's like, there's something behind that. And so it's like learning how to be raw with God, and even in relationship. But I think that comes back to what we were talking about, of the identity and the death of like, I am, especially in society now, is like, you know, what a man is A, B, and C and whatever. And it's like, in my life, like the men that I know, even the most like out externally, that are like, check all the boxes, you know, like huge jacked guys that are like covered in tattoos and manly, are the most like, it'll be the most teddy bear, like tender guys that I know, with the most healthy marriages. their kids love them, and their kids are awesome, and their friends love them, and they lay down their lives for people again and again. And then I also know on the same side, like close friends with people that you would look at and be like, dude, this guy's the man. Like, and it's like, his wife despises him, or he's divorced.
Jeez. Yeah.
His kids hate him. And it's like, and if you have a conversation with him, like, he's actually the worst. Like he doesn't, like, it's like he doesn't really want to be around anyone or whatever. And it's like, and so those are the dynamics and the fruit of those two dynamics of like, one guy is, the two outwardly would look the same, but one guy is like weak before God in a way that's like, I'm not too prideful to be real and raw where I am, and I'm not afraid to be real and raw about where I am. And then the other one that's like, it's usually bound by that fear of like, I'm afraid of, because it is scary to be raw and real, sometimes, most times, with people or with God, with yourself. And so, but yeah, I think like that dynamic of identity is like obviously that's kind of where that all comes out of. But
yeah, dang, you make a lot of great points, bro. I feel like I want to do a whole part 2 and just dive deep into like scripture with you and like go there. I'll be honest with you, coming into this, I wasn't sure if Luke, I was like, is Luke going to be like a satire, like kind of a dick comedian guy? And I was like, maybe, but here we are talking about God. So that's like, it's such a beautiful thing. It fulfills my heart because I love having these conversations. So tell me, I'm very curious. It seems like you have a very strong relationship with God. So I'm curious for you, like what your practice looks like day to day. Like, are you, cause I think from our audience and for me too, as a new baby Christian, I like to just come from the learning angle of like how other brothers in Christ are developing their relationship with God and strengthening it every day and getting deeper, because I feel his presence with me all the time. But then I meet other people, like for example, I met Russell Brand or like a George Janko. Their relationship with God is like so strong, and I'm like, yo, I want that. So I'm curious for you, like, what are some things that you do every day to sort of sharpen it and get closer to him?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to like, I think the stereotype is, if you become a new Christian, there's like this emotional high, at the beginning that's like, whoa, this is amazing, like whatever, and you're just so whatever, like stoked and blah, blah, blah. And then, and this isn't even, I guess, a stereotype, this is a like statistic of, the sustainability of that. And then you see this kind of decline where it's like, and it's literally, God, I'm trying to remember I think it's in Matthew, but I mean, Jesus literally talks about, it's like the moment, some of you plant, seeds and water in this soil, and, the moment wind comes and this comes and tribulation, then it dries up. And some of you plant over here in good soil and tend to it and whatever, and it, that's the tree planted by the, streams of living water that bears fruit in every season. And I think that's, I did have a, beginning high of, and it's hard to watch actually, like a lot of my friends at that time, being 18, and a lot of the friends I really like came into like Christianity with and like following God, seeing a large percentage of them not, following God anymore. And I think that like bothered me at a deep level, like, because I was afraid of that. I think it became a fear of mine of like falling, away from God. And we use that term a lot of like falling away from God. But I think the healthiest thing for Christianity and for a believer, for a Christian, is the theology and belief and truth about God that you're brought into Christianity with, like, has such an impact on the theology that sustains you, in as a Christian. And so I think one of the main thing I attribute to that is just having amazing like mentors and people in my life that I look up to that are, 30 plus years older than me, that have been following God for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of, for me internally, was what I set my sights on, was like, I want longevity, I want something that's sustainable, like, and it looks like that, emotionally. I think that's the hardest part. Like, we live in a culture that is hyper emotional and driven by impulse, and social media does that. And I mean, everything does that, but we're, it's kind of built in a way, attention and just everything. And so it's and we change things like, we change our business marketing plans, we change our music marketing, and we change everything to get the hook, to get our attention, to make our emotions feel something. And so it's interesting, you have this modern changing culture of emotion, and you have this, ancient way of living that doesn't change. And they don't coexist well usually. Like, and so it's learning, like, they clash because it's the complete opposite. It's like you have this way that Jesus talks about living that now almost verbatim goes against every, kind of thing of culture, of just with the way we treat each other and all these things, and just tons of ways of living. And I think one is, it's the instantaneous satisfaction, and then one's the longevity. But I think one thing I committed myself to was, like, any relationship, it was like, and I'm also very practical, like, all of that, you can say all of that and be like, oh, that's awesome. Like, you're like, okay, but what the heck does that look like? I'm very practical. So I would hear things like that from people and be like, okay, awesome. Like, what's that? And Jesus was very practical, like, literally, like, would say things and give practical things to disciples and instruction. And this is what this looks like. And so I mean, I think the best thing at the beginning was, like, looking at, again, like, people I look up to, what does their life look like? That, and the things I admire about them, not being like, oh, this guy is really good at this or whatever. It's like, man, this guy's marriage is the best. Like, this guy's family is so sick. This guy is the nicest guy ever. I'm like, what is he doing? I'm like, and literally across the board, common theme, verbatim, is, they make it a priority to spend time with God during the day. I've come to learn life changes, schedules change, being a parent changes, like, everything changes. So that doesn't mean, like, because I've done that too, and put this pressure of, like, okay, I have to, if I don't sit down and read my Bible for an hour, then, like, whatever, then I'm like falling short or whatever. Right. I have to, like, do this thing. But that would be weird if I did that with my wife, or, like, if I did that with my son, of, like, we didn't have our hour conversation today. What the heck? It's like, but if we were together all day, then that's great, And so I'm like, I think making a practice of trying to do that, like, as far as, like, setting apart time to read and pray, but also just, like, having to, like, set certain disciplines to, like, turn your heart towards him during the day and truth, like, because in our flesh and in the world we live in, it's the opposite. It's like, I want to scroll on my phone and TikTok and whatever. But, like, having, it's, you have to intentionally, like, be like, I'm going to, not do that for a minute, and I'm going to read something, or I'm like, I guess it's just the practicals of that. And also, like, being in community, it's like being around think being around people that are where you are at, people that are where you were, and people that are where you want to be at the same time and at different capacities. I think it's hard to be new or like where you're at and just be only surrounded with a ton of people that are where you were at years ago. And it's like, you're trying to like grow, and then you're like, I don't have the capacity to also like, you know, pour out all of this to other people. And so it's like being in that dynamic of like healthy, like community of people that you can be, like one of the most powerful things in my life, like that, because I was thinking the most like, I would say driven, kind of like passion in my life, I think because of my past and just, you know, also just like core belief of just being like a man and what that looks like. I'm just like super passionate about, you know, I've seen the way it destroys lives, just like purity in men and what that looks like. Again, it's like we live in a world where it's like you say something and then you're like, you have to give context to exactly what that means because it's going to be misinterpreted. Because there's, you know, that word alone, people hate that because of A, B, and C and whatever. It's like, I get that. Like, it's like, I'm not dismissing things, but it's like, again, it's one of those things. I look at mentors in my life, people that are 30 years ahead, that have healthy marriages, like, and not just appearing healthy marriages, but healthy, raw, vulnerable marriages. I remember asking those questions and being like, what does that look like? And it's the most daunting thing and the most countercultural thing is almost all of them have friends that are equal, like married friends and friends that are equal to them in that space, that they are, you know, they have deemed essentially like, hey, in our friendship, nothing off limits. Everything's on the table. Like, you have the right to, you know, essentially ask me anything at any time. To check on me and my motives and my heart and my, like, nothing's off limits. That's not like every friend I have is like that, because that's just not. It's like I have like less than 5 friends in my life that I'm like, those are my friends like that, where I'm like, and they're other guys, like best friends of mine that are married, that have kids, and it's like, hey, like, nothing's off limits in my life, even in the social media space. Like, where like, if I'm doing something or if I said something, like, I want you to be able to like challenge anything. Even if I'm going to be offended, like, and it's because that does hurt, and I've had that happen, and I've done that with friends too. You touch something that's like, hey, I don't know if I was misinterpreting this, but like, when you did this, like, I know you told, and it's out of a place of like, you're like, if you told me, I don't want to be mean, or I don't want to lie, but I'm struggling with lying. If you catch me lying, like, bring it up to me so I can like grow in that area. But it's like, if I call you lying and I'm like, hey, I love you, you gave me permission to like speak into this and like help you grow in this area. You know, sometimes you might be like, nah, dude, like, no, I wasn't lying, you know, because it hurts a little bit, you know, and it's vulnerable. But I think practically, like, the community aspect, that's like the two that a mentor of mine was like, those are the guardrails to the bridge that we walk in our life, is within the guardrails of truth, the Bible, and community that aligns with that. But those are like the two safe kind of spaces. But it's like, I know there's like so many formulas and devotionals in this, and like, it's all great. I think those are just like at the core, it's going to change throughout your life, you know. It looks a lot different than it did when I was 20 as it does now, being a dad and 25 and busy with work and you know, but it changes. But
Amen. Like, there's no right set way to like communicate with God or to build your relationship with him. Like, for me, some days it's morning prayer. Some days I'm in the gym and I'm listening to worship, and that gets it. Other times I need to like literally sit in a dark room and like pray and like write. So I feel like there's no right way. There's 1,000 ways you could communicate with God and get your your daily dose of the Holy Spirit, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I know we got to wrap. I know we got
You're
to get to work, but I honestly, bro, I would love to do a part 2 where we could just deep dive into
maybe in LA.
Into God and Scripture. Yeah, we should definitely make it happen. For the people that don't know where to find you, where can they follow you on social media?
Anywhere, any platform. I'm the exact same. Just at Luke White, named twice.
Why do you have it on there twice? So
because Luke White once was taken.
So. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Would you have gone like Luke White?
I know. I'm like, thankfully I didn't have to get that far, but yeah.
That's so funny. All right, y'all. Make sure you guys go follow Luke White. And thank you guys for tuning in to episode 132 of the Divij's Den podcast. We will see you guys in the next episode. Stay tuned for our part 2, God willing. Bye.